Hello, and welcome to show number 23 of the Infidel podcast of the damned. I'm your host, J. David Core, atheist, author, and actuated ambulist. And with me is my co-host, Nicole Smart. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Also joining us today is an Australian student currently studying Middle Eastern and Islamic history at university, Klingschor. Welcome to the show, Klingschor.
Thank you for having me.
Today is Thursday, April 8th, 2015, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming episodes of The Infidel, which will run beginning Monday, April 13th, 2015. Show notes for all of our podcasts can be found at infidelpodcast.blogspot.com. Every once in a while, I screw up the intro. Anyway, so we have a guest again today, a new guest, Klingschor, who recently put out a very interesting video. Nicole, you want to tell everybody what you thought about that video?
Oh, yes. It's called, Is It the Left That Fails to Oppose Islamism or Right-Wing Imperialists? Now, there are two things in there that I found interesting. First, he's looking at people who are saying that the left is the liberals are too easy on the Muslims, and that we are turning a blind eye on crimes, etc., etc. And then after that, and you can tell me if I got it wrong, Klingschor, but after that you go into history of the last 60, 70 years of the Middle East and how the Western governments did everything to suppress the left and to push as much as possible the actual Islamist people, or those who wanted to have an Islamic government, so that they would, and it was their way, the government's way of fighting the left, because in those days, for the longest time, even until recently, having the left in charge of anything is no good as far as the Western governments are concerned. And so that's been, I think the main thesis that Klingschor is bringing up is that attitude from the Western governments is what is responsible for today's situation in the Middle East. Now, did I get it right?
Well, I would clarify. I was concentrating more on, in the video, entirely on the left and not liberals. So I'm looking more at Marxists, anarchists, socialists, and communists than, say, liberals. Also, I would clarify that I would say that this sort of long-term, particularly American and British support, financial, logistical, political, for Islamism is a key factor. It's not the only factor, though. So another key factor, obviously, is Saudi support and Saudi imperialism, and also Pakistan played a key role as well. So I wouldn't say it's the only cause, but I would say it's a very significant factor that has to be taken into account, particularly when people say, the left doesn't criticize Islamism or whatever they say. I kind of think it's kind of trivial when you consider the right spent literally billions of dollars funneled into, the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, supporting Sadat, all these various movements and regimes. So it just seems to me kind of
Hypocritical?
Well, yeah, I guess. And not only that, but I've been able to find almost no. I don't deny that they exist. I'm sure they do. I've talked to people who network more on the left than I do, and they say, yeah, I've encountered some people who are like this, who do mitigate Islamism. So I won't deny that it exists. But in terms of verifiable evidence, I've been able to find almost no examples of this in my experience. The one example that people can actually cite is this report by One Law for All. It was a report on the pro-Islamist left, and they give almost no examples. I think they cite 3 groups. So it's actually really small. Not when you compare that, okay, 3 groups to massive, government and military support. It's sort of like where all I ask is for some perspective, anyway. So that's hopefully does that sort of clarify what I was up to and what I was doing.
Yeah, the video's very good.
And the point of the video wasn't even to identify the cause for Islamism. All I was doing was identifying the relationship between right-wing governments, the left, and Islamism internationally. What has been the relationship characteristically? So that's that hopefully that clarifies. Oh, also one more thing to add is that the point of the support was political expediency. So when Islamism is no longer politically expedient, they also get attacked. So now we have post 9/11. The US is attacking is antagonistic or against ISIS, for example, or Boko Haram. So and will also support secular dictatorships. So, for example, Mubarak in Egypt, and now the current dictator there, or Iran under the Shah, for example, that was secular. So it's whatever facilitates the politico-economic interests. So it's not like a principle like we must support Islamism. It's they happened to support Islamism for a long time pretty consistently when it was expedient, and that was the point of the video, was to highlight that relationship. All right, I've talked for too much, so
well, my issue is, I consider myself about as liberal an American as you're going to find, without being, a tree hugger, and I don't go quite that far, but the idea that the left coddles Islam is that it's actually reactionary to the right in the current atmosphere. It's the right's attacks on Islam as an umbrella.
It's the xenophobia. It's the conspiracy theories. Like, or you can't trust Muslims. They can't be friends, or they're all doing taqiyya, or they're all. It's not just, oh, I don't like the Quran, it's got some crappy bits in it. I mean, that's fine. It's this hysteria, and people react to that. And then because people are criticizing the hysteria, like left liberals or people who are socially progressive, the right then, or people like the conservatives on the right, I should say, then say, oh, you're defending Islam, why aren't you criticizing it? And so it's, I mean, would you say that is that what you're elucidating?
That's exactly my point. Yeah, it's not, and then you have that famous argument with Sam Harris, Ben Affleck, and Bill Maher, where Bill Maher is hearing everything that they were saying through a prism, and he was right and he was wrong, and then Sam Harris was hearing everything Ben Affleck was saying through his own prism, and everything he was saying was right and it was wrong, because they were speaking in shorthand at each other, and it was different shorthand.
No,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to agree.
Well, I was what I'd like is some of the historical examples you gave, because I've always been a fan of history, and so except that the Middle East is not my forte. I've never really spent any time except maybe a bit of the Second World War, and that's it. But I liked some of the examples that you gave, like, for example, when the Americans were dropping leaflets that said that Allah's hand... how did you go again?
The British. That was the British.
Okay.
In there was a Marxist rebellion occurring in Oman, and yeah, they said the hand of God smashes communism. Yeah.
So that's an example of how, the Western world is partly responsible for Islamism being so strong today, because when they had a choice between the left or Islamism in those days, well, the left was the worst enemy possible, so they kept pushing, against the left.
what's useful for me to come on here is I guess is to take the information that I've learned through, I guess, Islamic studies, Middle Eastern history studies, and the various primary sources that I read, and to be able to impart that knowledge to people. But more specifically, people will have certain questions or perceptions which hopefully I can help to clarify or elucidate or correct. So one really useful one that will help is this whole deal with Sharia and stuff like that. So I guess can I just do like a spiel for a bit, and then once I give elucidate this information, then you feel free to ask questions, clarify, or to direct me onto areas that you guys find interesting or think deserves clarification. So I guess I'll start first of all with ideology. So what is ideology? Well, I would submit for a working definition, because we don't really think about words that we use, right? But how do you distinguish ideology from a belief system? I mean, I believe that evolution, is real, and also as a fact, and also that the theory of evolution, has predictive value and is therefore validated, right? That's a belief, right? Is that the same as believing that God created, mankind as Adam and Eve? No, we have different kinds of beliefs. I would submit that ideology is a moralistic belief system prescribing a correct model of society and often the correct behavior necessary to achieve that model, right? So nationalism is ideology. There should be, an Aryan nation, and we have to be militaristic to expunge the corrupting elements. Whatever. The Armenians should have this great pan-Armenia, right? This is what I would call ideology, and religion is the same. So we should be living under, right, an Islamic state, right? Let's take the ISIS or whatever. We should be destroying shirk and bid'ah, etc., etc. Whatever, right? So this is what ideology is: how society should be and the correct behavior that you should do to get there. Does that make sense? Does that seem feasible?
Yes.
As a definition for ideology, right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Right. So I just want to keep that in the background here. Okay. So what's interesting is that my example is Islam, right? Islamic history. So how does Islam fare as an ideology in terms of its acceptance, interpretation, implementation? It's very interesting. So what? And when I was first reading this and discovering this information, I found it very confusing. Because I assumed, all right, ideology is the motivation, is a key factor to explain why people act. But what I found sort of contradicted that. So this is what I found. Here are some examples. So let's take alcohol, for example. Now the Quran, well, it has some verses seem to allow it and others forbid it. But within the Islamic exegetical tradition, this is interpreted as a progressive. First it was okay, and then it was abrogated to the point where you cannot drink alcohol. And the hadith are much stricter in this respect. So the punishment within the hadith, so Sahih Muslim, for example, contains a lot of these hadith, is lashing. The punishment for drinking alcohol is you get lashed, like torture essentially. But what do we find? We hear accounts of the drinking habits of early Muslim scholars and caliphs, like the Umayyads and the Abbasids used to drink alcohol. We hear of the drinking culture of medieval, say, Al-Andalus, where I think the second most commonly grown crop was grapes for wine, right? And you had all this massive drinking culture, and you had all this wine poetry and classical Arabic literature, and so on and so forth, right? So consistently throughout Islamic history, Muslim societies have consistently ignored this injunction. The Quran says don't drink, the Hadith say you get tortured if you drink, and Muslims have just ignored this. Or take homoeroticism, that's another good example. So the Quran says that homoerotic activity is fahisha, it's like a sin, sexual sin, right? And the Hadith are very strict. People who do the act of the people of Lot, as it's called. So sodomy is like the act of the people of Sodom in English. Arabic has a similar kind of system where the homosexual sex is called liwat, right? The act of Lot, or the people of Lot, right? So the hadith in the Jami of Tirmidhi, for example, one of the canonical Sunni hadith collections. Oh, hadith, by the way, is a saying attributed to Muhammad, right? Source of law. So the hadith of Muhammad saying basically kill homosexuals, kill people who do the act of love. You know, what's the specific? It doesn't matter. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so it's like, you know, kill people who do the act of love. Now, amal qawm Lut, I think is the Arabic. Anyway, the point is that this was and within the Islamic law schools is pretty consistent. So most of them prescribe death, although the Hanafis are discretionary. Anyway, this has been routinely ignored. So we find lots like caliphs, Abbasid caliphs, and Spanish Andalusian caliphs had, you know, male lovers, male concubines, were openly gay or homoerotic. You have this culture of homoeroticism throughout medieval Islamdom. So you have all this homoerotic poetry, for example. Gay prostitutes or male prostitutes for men were the highest paid of all prostitutes in medieval Muslim Spain, and so on and so forth, right? So again, it's sort of like, all right, so how do we square this? I mean, consistently, or take zina, for example. There are almost no instances within verifiable history, within the actual historical record, so going beyond the hadith, which are myth, right, to the actual verifiable Islamic history, there are almost no instances before the recent history of anyone being stoned to death for adultery. Almost none. They almost don't exist. So it's very strange, right? And the jurists actually implemented various legal stratagems to prevent anyone from ever having to be stoned to death or punished for adultery or fornication. So all these weird things like like the sleeping fetus. So the idea that a fetus can be, you know, developing in a woman's womb for years, like up to like 3 or 5 years. So if you get a woman who has a child out of wedlock, not wedlock, after she's been as a widow, right, or if she's been divorced, right, then that's empirical evidence she committed adultery, right, or she had sex outside of marriage. Well, they say no, because she was married previously. So actually, she was impregnated legally, lawfully, and then divorced, and then the baby was inside her for a couple of years, and that's what happened. So that's real, like, yeah, no, that's a doctrine within Hanafi and Maliki jurisprudence, for example. So
do they still do that?
Weird.
Is that still anywhere?
I don't know if it's still actually practiced. Or take dhimmis, for example. So, you know, the Quran says, you know, attack the Christians and Jews and make them subject to the jizya and make them humbled and submissive. And so within Islamic legal thought, you have all these, you know, you're not allowed to build churches higher than mosques. You're not allowed to ride on a horse. You have to ride on a donkey. You can't bear arms. You can't have any political position or power over a Muslim. But throughout Islamic history, this is often ignored, right? So you have Jews becoming like the viziers in Spain, for example. There was like a mob, and Jews were pogromed, and justification given was because they were given this power. But the point is that the laws were ignored, you know, vis-a-vis this. Or in North Africa under the Abbasids, you had, you know, Christian bureaucracy. I mean, most of the empire of the caliphate was non-Muslim, including their administration for like a century or so after the rise of Islam, and the population remained majority Christian for a lot longer than that. So again, the rules were often ignored, and what's quite interesting is that throughout most of Islamic history, the Sharia just hasn't been implemented. The Islamic law hasn't been implemented. The Abbasids tried to implement it. They failed because it doesn't work. So they ended up confining Islamic law to inheritance law. These courts dealt with inheritance and marriage and stuff like that, right? This private law. And when it came to criminal and administrative law, they developed a parallel secular administrative legal system, which is often called Qanun, which is from Greek canon. Anyway, so the claim that ideology such as Islam, Islamic law, the Quran, makes people act in a certain way doesn't fit. What we see consistently throughout history is that people ignore or interpret the ideology as they see fit in their contexts, and it's pretty consistent. And if you look at the movements when they did try to literally implement Islamic law, such as the Murabitun, the Muwahhidun, the Wahhabis, what you usually have is groups who are already on the margins, who come from these violent tribal environments. So a violent context produces a violent interpretation of Islam, right? Whereas these rich, secure, sedentary societies produce a more hedonistic or lax, or just a non-implementation of Islam. So I guess one thing that I think is very important is that ideology is passive or benign. In and of itself, it doesn't really have any causal value. So there's something independent of ideology that determines whether or not it's implemented, whether or not it's how it's interpreted. And this is borne out very clearly with Islamic history, where Muslims have consistently ignored the Sharia, not implemented it, ignored the Quran, or just not implemented these rules, flouted them, etc., etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I would take a little bit of a issue with part of that, in that for example, what it says in the Bible is Christian ideology, would be considered Christian ideology, but within Christianity you also have all these different ideas of what it means and the different interpretations of what it means. So you end up with people applying their other ideologies to their religious ideology. So like in America right now, we have this idea, I can't remember what it's called, but it's this idea that
libertarianism?
No, it's a different. It has to do with wealth. It has to do with if you believe in Jesus, you'll be wealthy.
Prosperity gospel.
It's prosperity doctrine.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So that is not just. That's definitely not a Christian or a strict biblical interpretation ideology. They're adding Randian philosophy into that, and they're adding Smith into that. I mean, they're taking all these different ideas and mixing. So an ideology is not necessarily just what your religion says. It's your worldview overall. And so your worldview is going to be affected by such things as how much strife there is and things like that. But it's not the religion itself that you're going to be calling your ideology. It's a bunch of things.
I guess that's true, but the same thing applies, is that the context usually determines, one, whether or not people accept ideology, two, how it's interpreted. So whether or not you have, for example, this gospel, prosperity gospel or libertarian or whatever interpretation, or a Catholic interpretation or whatever, how it's even interpreted is dependent on context or some other independent factors. And then the third one is whether or not you even implement it. Right, so the Islamic law is a good example, because at the time when you had the jurists in medieval Muslim Spain saying, yes, punishment for homosexuality, death, you had gay caliphs. I mean, people did not implement the laws and the jurisprudence and the theory that they identify with. And you see this. I mean, I remember once talking to a Muslim lady at my university who I went to uni with, and we're talking about morality or something, and she ended up admitting that she thinks homosexuals should be put to death. Gay people should be killed. But then she said, but I would never do that, right? I would never do that. So it's kind of like it's this, even when people have this interpretation of you should do X, they often will not actually implement it. There's like a non-implementation of people's ideals.
But that's her saying she wouldn't do it, but that's not her saying that she would defend them if it was being done.
I guess that's true, but you still have this problem of states claiming to represent this idea and not actually implementing it with pretty consistently throughout Islamic history, such as this thing of alcohol, for example. I mean, that's just pretty universal. Right. It's universally accepted within Islamic thought that alcohol is is alcohol is forbidden, and yet they just drank anyway. So I guess what I take away is that the variable of, and I'm going to quote myself here because I'm much more eloquent when I write than when I speak offhand. The variable of observable behaviors within the adherents of any given ideology indicates that their ideology, including their interpretation and implementation of their ideology, is determined and modulated by something independent of said ideology. And I would submit that the discernible determining and modulating factors like resource access, state policy, victim reactions to state policy, etc., are consistently reducible to class relations. That's my opinion.
That I would agree with 100%. Get back on the topic of alcohol and Islam. My father used to tell me this story, and I've never had anybody that I was able to verify it with. Maybe you know the answer to this or not, but he said that in World War I time in Arabia, I don't know where he got this information, but that they used to toast, and he said that in the Hadiths it says the first drop of alcohol will not pass my lips, so they would spill the first drop on the ground and then drink the rest.
No, I haven't. That's fantastic, but I don't know about that hadith. I've never encountered. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It may well, but that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But I mean it's just consistent. I mean, just look at the Saudis, for example. I mean, they in order to sort of consolidate their state, they identify with this Wahhabi ideology, right, which they use to bolster the state. This is to try and give them their state legitimacy. But the ruling family, I mean, like the stories that come out of they just ignore it. They're just fully hedonistic. They just do not care. The laws do not apply to them. The Islamic law does not apply to them. And when it's expedient, they will ignore it. So, for example, I find this interesting anyway. I'm throwing all these facts on you. I don't know if you find this interesting or informative. But,
yes, I do.
I do.
So far, I do.
So I'm going to make you subject to this anyway. So, for example, the Wahhabis back in the early 20th century, when they were expanding throughout Arabia, they had this Wahhabi ideology which enabled them to enslave. They were able to justify enslaving other Muslims in Arabia because they're saying, they're not pure Muslims, so we're legitimate to go and attack them, kill them, enslave them, right? But when this Wahhabi army, they're called the Al-Ikhwan, the Brotherhood, when they were became a problem for the King Saud and the Saudi ruling family because they were then attacking and encroaching on the British territories in I think like Kuwait.
We're losing you.
In Oman and these.
Yeah. We lost the last minute.
Yeah, your video froze for a second. But we can see you, but your video froze.
What was the last? Oh, do you want me to turn it off and on?
No, it's doing it itself right now. Your video's gone, and now you're coming back. But
what was the last thing that you heard?
I don't recall. What was the last thing that we heard before?
Whenever that happened. The Wahhabis.
Yeah, the Wahhab. It was about the Wahhabis.
Right. In a nutshell, when it's expedient, they ignore or subvert their ideology. So their ideology was they had this Ikhwan, this brotherhood, this army who were, following Ibn Abdul Wahhab's vision of the Hanbali interpretation of Islam, attacking, conquering, expanding. And then the moment when it became not expedient anymore, so when this Ikhwan army was encroaching on British colonial interests in the region, the Saudis were allied with the British to some degree, and they knew that this would be a problem because the British could crush them. So they actually ended up killing and destroying their own army, the Ikhwan, so that the Ikhwan wouldn't impact upon, so that they would not be attacking these British colonies and thus threatening the rule of the Saudis, who would then be threatened by the British reaction. So whenever it's expedient, they just turn against their own ideology and disregard it or subvert it. So I just find it really interesting.
Right.
And this is a system.
there's an internet meme that sums that up pretty well. Where there's an episode of Futurama where the robots are coming from space, and the news announcer says, "But I, for one, welcome our intergalactic overlords." So he says, "Everything that I've ever believed in, I don't believe it anymore because they're coming."
So did you have any? Anyway, this is this issue of ideology and its passivity and it being determined by context is something that I find particularly interesting, and that's what I think is something that is worth sharing with people vis-a-vis common perceptions of the threat of ideology, etc., etc. But do you guys have any areas of interest or anything that you want to hear elucidated?
Well, I did, because we're a news show and we like to keep people educated on what's going on in the world of religion and news. As I mentioned before we actually went on the air, I was talking about the Reclaim Australia movement, which is basically run by a bunch of like right-wing, crazy reactionaries, as I understand it, but it has a lot of popular support among people who just don't really seem to understand. And again, it's the same kind of thing where they're afraid of creeping Sharia irrationally. But I'll tell a quick story. A couple before I even heard anything about Reclaim Australia, about 2 months ago, a friend of mine does web design, and she had this woman in Australia that she was doing web design for, and the woman wanted to write a book, and I publish, I'm a self-published writer, and so my friend asked me to talk to her about what you need to do this. So I friended this woman on Facebook, and I talked to her about that for a couple of days, and then I started seeing her posting stuff about the Muslims in her community and how cloistered they are and how they're you can't trust them and what they're planning. And she just began to creep me out, and I had to unfriend her because I didn't even want to see that stuff showing up on my. I wanted to just lay into her and say, "What the fuck is wrong with you, lady?" But and I didn't realize that it was that big a thing. But apparently, it's all over parts of Australia where it's like a huge issue.
It's a trend at the moment, yeah. I mean, Australia has a long history of this kind of stuff. I mean, you just go back and look at, like, the anti-Chinese propaganda was insane back in the late 1800s. You know, what are they called? The Mongolian octopus, and it's just like this really hilarious, you know, like propaganda, and so Australia actually has a long history of like race riots and conservative, like nativism and violence against immigrants. So this is just, I guess, another example. I guess the thing that annoys me is that every single time the conservatives, the reactionaries say, these guys are going to destroy us, these guys are going to ruin our society, and every single time they are wrong. Every time they were wrong, right? They're in, there are always some teething problems, cultural barriers, blah, blah, blah. And within 3 generations, it's usually done. Everyone's integrated and there's not really a problem. And the new group will bring over their food and their cuisine and some fashion and whatever, right? And so it's sort of like, okay, we were wrong about every single group previously, but this time, this group, this is the real deal. Right. These guys will destroy us. We were wrong every single time. With every single other group, we were wrong, right?
This time there really is a wolf.
But this time, and it's like, just give me a break. I mean, and so look, so with this, I mean, I kind of ignore the media and I ignore this kind of goings on. So I'm not even that familiar with this Reclaim Australia rally. I just, it's just whatever. It's just rhetoric and hot air and these idiots protesting. Fine. Now, but what I will say is that I understand the fear, right? Because you go onto the telly and you see all of this. You know, there's ISIS and there's all these groups and they're killing people and they're horrible, etc., right? And then you watch Today Tonight or whatever, all these shitty investigative journalist TV shows that we have in Australia, and they'll be like, neighborhood is being taken over, or in this neighborhood, no one speaks English, or whatever. Like this, you have this, you know, and they'll oh look, there's this one Wahhabi guy who says these shitty things or whatever. Fine, right? And so people, and he talk to people, he go on the internet and you read, oh, Muhammad said kill, well, you know, massacred the Jews, and oh no, and so it forms this, you forms this sort of narrative of fear, and people are scared, right? But my problem is, right, that most of it's kind of rubbish, right? It's most of the claims and the fears are based upon either falsehood or massive over exaggeration, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples. So I've talked to people and they've said, oh, Muslims are trying to get rid of Santa Claus in kindergarten and schools, right? They're trying to, you can't have, you know, we're Muslims, you can't force this Christianity on us, so get no more Santa in the kindergarten, right? Oh no, they're taking over and they're, you know, changing our culture and forcing us to adapt. Now, I researched this, right? And I'm not saying there hasn't been instances of it, but I wasn't able to find any. This is what I found, right? So I found a story about how the Herald Sun, which is a notable conservative Australian newspaper, has lied about these issues. Okay. Then I found a story about in South Australia about this Muslim schoolgirl who's been leading this campaign to make people aware that there's no problem. Muslims don't have a problem with having, you know, having Santa Claus in the kindergarten and school, whatever, and we're cool with that. All right. And then I found an official statement by the Victorian Islamic Council, or whatever it's called, the Islamic Council of Victoria, which officially said, yeah, we're totally cool. You can have Santa Claus. We don't have a problem with Santa Claus in the kindergarten. It's all good, etc., etc., right? So it's like, all right. So this picture that's emerging is quite different from the one that I heard from these people who were afraid and stuff, right? And then what I found was there was an instance of Santa being banned from coming to school due to the religious sensitivity of students. But it wasn't Muslims, it was Jews, and also I think Hindus. So it's just kind of like,
and it was probably also the Christians making the overt effort there. It probably wasn't a reaction to complaint by the Jews and Hindus. It was probably I'm assuming it would be the Christians going, well, we have these Jews, maybe we shouldn't have Santa.
Right. I mean, I that's also a thing that people claim is, so that's what I think the South Australia Muslim girl was saying was people are preemptively being really sensitive, but it's okay. People, like, Santa Claus is fine. You know, you don't have to withdraw Santa Claus. So that's one example. I'll give you another example. And this one's actually an American example, but you have the same kind of phenomenon, the same kind of over exaggerations. You know, these little news stories that people pass from link on Facebook and share and oh no and whatever, and chain emails. Here's another example of this. So there was this instance in America, right, where you go into these like Jihad Watch and all these whatever, stop Islamization, and the headlines scream, Muslims stone Christians in America, right? And it's like, oh, this is Sharia law in America. The Islamization is underway. Oh my God. It's like, wow, what actually happened? Well, I went and I read the court transcripts from the case, right? And so what happened was a group of Christian reactionaries turned up at an Arab festival with a pig's head on a stick in Dearborn, with an actual pig's head on a stick, right? With T-shirts saying, what was it, like "fuck Muhammad" or something like that, like with a megaphone saying Muhammad, your Islam is false, Muhammad was a pedophile, etc., right? And some mostly a couple of children threw some rubbish at them, right? And some pebbles,
saw that.
Right?
I saw the video.
That's what. Hey.
I saw the video.
Yeah.
I saw it.
That's. Huh.
I saw it. I saw the video. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and that becomes in the reporting, Muslims are stoning Christians in America and implementing Sharia law. I mean, it's just crazy. So, I mean, it's or another example, right? So there was a big protest in Perth, right? But a Muslim protest against ISIS, right? And I know about this because I had a friend who was there, right? Now the news rocks up. Does the news show the protest? No. What they show is like one or two, a tiny handful of these crazy Wahhabis were like, yeah, go ISIS, right? Like just a tiny number of people. They show them, and then they also show these crazy, like, xenophobic, anti-Islamic protesters. And so what ends up in the news is, ooh, crazy psycho Muslim protest and people protesting against them. And whereas the actual thing was this massive protest against ISIS, right? So I mean, this is, and so when you have all these kinds of materials and processes, constantly washing over people, people become afraid. There's this narrative is built. There's an enemy figure subverting us. You should be afraid. And so people look at all this information and look at ISIS and these groups overseas, and they become afraid. And that's how people are mobilized into these rallies like, Reclaim Australia. So I understand why they're afraid. I just think that it's mostly based upon information that is distorted or false. And that's my take on these kind of movements.
Well, the thing is, that kind of stuff happens because some of the people in power or would like to be in power are trying to get the people's attention away from the real problem. So
right. Yeah, that's what I said. They gin up false narratives in order to. It's all a straw man. They build straw mans so that they can be the hero.
I remember in watching American presidential. What was it? It was all these Republican Party politicians explaining their who were vying with each other to become president. I don't know what this is called. I don't know what the words are for what stage of the primaries. I don't know what the words are. Anyway, you had these Republicans saying, "This is what I will do. You should vote for me. This is what I'm going to do." And a lot of them were like, "Yeah, I'm going to clamp down on Sharia law," as if there's this plague of, like there's these Islamic enclaves where they, Islamic law is the law of the land in swaths of America, and it's gonna take these politicians, so they definitely exploit these kinds of sentiments. Another important thing is that this anti-Islam network, right? This isn't like an accident. There is a set of people who consistently output most of these materials are traceable back to quite a small handful of people, right? It's not like lockstep, but it's like a de facto organic alliance of convenience between various people who are producing this material. And essentially what you have, hold on, let me. There's a great report on this called Fear Inc., but they've also now created a database, and it has a really, really simple graph that shows you the massive funding that these people get from all these various think tanks, etc., etc. Well, let me see if I can actually find it. It's called the Islamophobia Network. And so you have, hold on, it's just loading. This is, explore the network. All right, here we go. So you have Donors Capital Fund, which contributed $27 million. The Clarion Project, which I think is connected to the Donors Capital Fund. 18 million. You've got the Scaife Foundations, the Lyndon Harriet Bradley Foundation, the Rosenwald Middle Road and Abstraction Fund, which then and they funnel all these really conservative organizations and think tanks. They then funnel all this money into, like, you know, the David Horowitz Freedom Center and this Clarion Project, and they then fund all these anti-Islamic researchers, Daniel Pipes, Robert Spencer, Stephen Emerson. He was famous recently for claiming that there are these Muslim no-go zones in cities in the UK where non-Muslims can't go, right?
Yeah.
And they then fund all this research, which then gets passed on to all these activists like Pamela Geller, like Brigitte Gabriel, like Walid Shoebat, and these people go around, they give all these talks all throughout America, and they have all these big popular blogs, and this is where all the material for, like, Act for America, Stop the Islamization of America, etc., comes from. So all of this hysteria doesn't come out of nowhere. There's actually a concerted campaign by certain interests to facilitate this. Now, what's especially interesting is when you get down to it, most of the key figures in this movement are clearly identifiable. You can trace a lot of this back to a very specific conflict and a very specific interest in the Middle East. There is a specific conflict that generates this, and it's the Israel conflict. If you look at a lot of the key figures in this, most of them, in fact, almost all of them, are extreme Zionists. And when you look at the origins of most of the literature for this, most of it goes back to a lady called Bat Yor, right? And so what Bat Yor has created is okay. So basically, post 1967, you have the rise of religious Zionism, and you have the rise of the creation of this narrative of a Jewish Muslim. A cosmic Jewish-Muslim conflict, right? So what's happening in Israel and the Middle East? It isn't because, you know, Israel has stolen lots of land and have sort of expunged all these people from this territory in ethnic cleansing, and then conquered this other land and systematically taking it away and giving it to settlers. No. It's because of this cosmic Jewish-Muslim conflict, right? It's because of this Islamic animus against Jews and Christians, right? And so this becomes a means to galvanize Jewish-Christian solidarity against Muslims. So you have out of this conflict, I mean, and it's pretty, let's see, overview. It's pretty hilarious when you go through the list of people who are involved, and what their background. So Andrew Bostom, right, big producer of a lot of these works like Islamic anti-Semitism, right, and some of the material he synthesizes is good academic material, but a lot of it is distorted for this political agenda. Well, he's conservative, Jewish, and Zionist. Giselle Littman, Bat Yor, again, another one of the key people who produces the material, like the academic material that underpins this movement. Conservative, Jewish, Zionist. David Yerushalmi.
It's also evangelicals, though. It's not just...
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's true. There's an alliance here, right. David Yerushalmi, conservative, Jewish, Zionist. Robert Spencer, now he's a Christian. So here we have a conservative Christian ally to these people. And I think Stephen Emerson is, I think, an evangelical Christian. I'm not sure. So you have these. This hasn't come out of nowhere. You have these very specific political interests whose political needs are facilitated by promoting this kind of material. So it's not an accident, right? This isn't like, oh, it's developed out of nowhere. People have exploited the current conflicts in the Middle East, like 9/11, for example, and it's facilitating their political interests. And you're right, the conservative Christians plays into their power base as well to be able to point to the Bible and say, look, Israel is reborn. It helps, this ideology helps to sort of facilitate their control and to facilitate their interests. So I guess, and this is not a conspiracy. This is easily verifiable. I mean, you just have to research the interests and the identity of all the key people involved in this picture emerges, and also the identifiable.
It is a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy in the sense that it's subverted and that it's kept secret. It's right out there in the public.
Right. It's not like, oh, there's like this is a very natural.
It's like the Illuminati.
Right. This is a natural, organic alliance of convenience between people whose interests are facilitated by this. Right. So it's. Anyway, so the information. So I guess that's another thing that I find particularly annoying with this is that the discourse is poison. Instead of us being able to clearly look at, okay, what does look at Islamic history, look at the Quran, look at these militant movements. What do they say? Are their motivations? And what empirically, what's the data that sort of can give us some sort of causal mechanism for what leads to this kind of behavior? How does it rise and fall, etc., etc. We get this hysterical narratives and all this trash thrown into the public discourse by this political interest. So anyway, I've rambled for too long there. So I'm sorry. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show because we've gone well over an hour now. But this was all fascinating. I was enthralled the whole conversation. So you can
we had a great time. Thank you.
Yeah. So other than your channel on YouTube, is there anything else that you want to let people know about where they can find your work online?
I guess what I mostly do is I write articles on my blogs. So my blogs are let's see. Let me actually just what's the exact? Okay, research-islam.blogspot.com, for example, is where I write academic, quasi-academic. I'm not yet an academic, right? But this is where my academic materials are, right? So this is like serious research into the origins of the Quran and Islamic history and these kinds of issues. For my more political stuff, my blog is Klingschor, KLINGSCHOR.blogspot.com. Now, for both of these blogs, I also have accompanying YouTube channels, with a Klingschor YouTube channel and a youtube.com/researching Islam, one word, no hyphen. I guess that's where I input most of my materials. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Well, awesome. Make sure that you send me a text, via Skype, and then with all those addresses, and I will add them in the show description.
Sure.
We'll put them on the show notes also. Okay, so hopefully we'll have you on again sometime. But this.
No worries. It was a pleasure.
Good. Glad you were here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show, Nicole. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, that's all for today. Please make sure that you subscribe to the Atheism TV channel. There you can watch the Infidel News for the Damned, where our talented team of writers and anchors present these and other stories not normally covered in the media. In the coming week, the Infidel will rerun today's stories and many more fascinating ones. You'll find Atheism TV at youtube.com/atheismtv. The Infidel Podcast of the Damned is a Nicole SD production. Nicole and I would like to recognize and say thank you to Truth Surge, who did the voiceover used in our intro and gave us permission to use music from his song Lied To as our opening theme. We'd also like to thank Klingschor for participating in today's podcast. Thank you again, sir. Nicole's channel is Nicole SD and can be found at youtube.com/NICOLSD. I am Gamut on YouTube, at Gamut on Twitter, and my blog and information on my books, including my nonfiction title, Believe It, You Know an Atheist, as well as my mystery novels featuring the atheist detective Lupa Schwartz, can be accessed at tinyurl.com/lupalanding. While there, you can sign up to receive my newsletter. Signing up also entitles you to choose one free ebook title from my collection of 99-cent novellas. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Good night.
Cheers.